Hi, I'm RoseAnn Janzen for the Conscious Evolution Journal and RevealYourLife.com. I am talking with Carrie Roldan, and Carrie has a really unique set of coaching skills. She is a team coach, a sports coach, and and my phone dings. And Carrie is also a business life coach. And that combination makes her really, really interesting and gives her a unique perspective on putting everything together and getting everyone moving in the right direction and supporting everyone so that they build together to their greatest potential. I absolutely love this. Carrie, I have some really good questions for you.
Well, good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio?
No, I think it was really fun the way you introduced me. I've never called myself a business life coach. I've called myself like a life coach like I've played around with that, and I like the way that just rolled off your tongue. So yeah, I'm happy to be here with you, and I'm excited to find out what questions you have and see where this goes.
Well, I thought we would start at the beginning. Um, so when clients come, this is where when the team starts, when people are coming. So sometimes like you don't have a choice, and sometimes you do of who comes to you. So how do you recognize um, who has the greatest potential to go all the way to the top, whether the people come to you individually or in a group that you have no control over, or in a group that you select?
Okay, so I guess I do need to explain a little bit about what the heck RoseAnn is talking about, right? So I work in a couple capacities with people, right? I am a high school cross country and track coach, so that is my I have a little bit bigger athletic background, but for the context of this call, right? I coach high school cross country and track, and then I also um, work inside a couple of couple of our friends' businesses, actually, um, as a coach and a mastermind leader. And then my third capacity is I have my own business where I'm working with clients one-on-one, and I host a mastermind that RoseAnn is a part of. So I have these three different ways that I work with people. So when RoseAnn's saying you don't have a choice, right? In my personal business, I always have a choice of who I work with. And actually, I feel like we all have that choice in every area of our life and business. But I get what you're talking about, RoseAnn, in terms of like when kids come out for the cross country team, right? We don't cut based on personality. And also, if clients come inside of the other businesses that I work in, right? I have some amount of say of whether or not we're going to take people on as clients, but in general, I work with who shows up. And I actually think, RoseAnn, that is the key. So I'll just talk athletically, right? I would so much, my sort of philosophy as a high school coach. So depending on where you are in the country, maybe it's legal to recruit kids from outside your area, or where I happen to live. Athletes have a choice. All students have a choice of about 6 high schools. So they have the one that's closest to their house, but they can go to whichever one they want. They just have to let the district know. So I'm not somebody who's really chasing talent. I'm someone who gives whoever shows up what they need to succeed. And so I think you asked, how can I tell, right? How can I tell if someone's going to succeed? And it really comes down to, do they show up for themselves? Do they show up in a team aspect or a mastermind aspect? Do they show up for the other people? And do they show up as their whole self? So we actually had a conversation with the high school athletes yesterday, and it was about their role on our team, and how None of them are there by accident. And no matter what they believe, they need to know about themselves that it's not a coincidence that they're here. And whether they're the fastest or the slowest or the most outspoken or the most quiet, that there's a reason that they're there, and that their unique gifts and talents are valuable there. And I think, I know that when you take the time, when I take the time to do my best to see other people's unique gifts and talents, to see and to verbalize, to point out what it is that they offer. I don't know. I mean, for me, I feel like that's what I think. What I know what your question was, how do I know if someone's going to succeed? And I think the short answer is I just know, because I see that they have what it takes, right? And what it takes is just really belief and commitment. And once you see those things, then it's just about nurturing it and about reminding. When I feel like more than three quarters, 97% of my job is encouraging and reminding.
Exactly. Okay, well, I think you've answered my next two questions. Was, how great a part does desire and determination play in success? And you said belief and commitment, right? And then you have to encourage and keep reminding them. And I feel like that's what we have to do as business people ourselves, that we have to do that for ourselves too. And that's a huge role that our coaches play in our life, is like, remember you wanted this. Remember you wanted this.
Yes, and remember why you wanted this.
Yeah.
Right? And I know with the whole coronavirus situation happening, and what our athletic practices changed and our businesses changed in terms of, a lot of the people who I work with, we would meet in person a couple times a year. We met in person in February, and then everything shut down in March. And with that, the high school athletes and practice, like, it's weird when the world shuts down. Mm-hmm. It's weird when people's priorities suddenly shift, right? And that happened in everybody's lives and businesses. And so it was a chance for, and athletically, right, for people to reevaluate and recommit and ask, like, why do I want this? I know that happened for me in my business, and I came to like a huge amount of peace in where I am and what I'm doing. And I've actually become more relaxed as a result, and more committed to what really matters to me personally, right? And I think that's all of us, right, need somebody and sometimes circumstances to remind us, why did I commit to this in the first place? Right. And I think it's okay to, it's interesting what happens. One of the businesses that I work in, people come with this idea of what they want to get out of the program. And a lot of them halfway through decide that, not that this program isn't for them, but that the reason they joined isn't what they really wanted, right? Like, and I feel like that's great. That's awesome. Now we know what you really want, because I think people commit to things that they don't really want because they think that it will get them what they want. So like for me, my, and I don't know where this is going to go with our conversation, but for me, like for the longest time, I was committed to be an entrepreneur, right? I was committed to build an empire and to have this really big business. And it was, my reason for doing that was I thought it would prove my worth in some way. I felt like, well, because I know I can, right? That because I know I'm capable, that I should. And I am an entrepreneur, but not in the way that I thought I would be, right? I just told you, I work inside other people's businesses as, as a consultant and as a coach. And my personal business is exactly the size that feels comfortable and easy and fun for me right now in this stage of life. And I realize like I'm actually not committed to that building a big coaching practice of my own and like, I don't know, franchising myself or turning, like I'm not committed to that vision that I thought I was committed to. And it's because I thought it would bring me something, but I found that something on the way. If that makes any sense at all.
It absolutely does, because I've been on the same sort of journey. Yeah.
So tell me about yours.
Well, it's interesting. The year started with thinking that I was going in a certain direction and that I was having support in that direction. And it completely changed, just completely 100% changed. And everything started falling away and falling away. And I was totally torqued out about it. And until I realized that the stuff that was falling away was the stuff that was, just like you said, it wasn't what I wanted. It was what I thought I should have to get my goal, but it wasn't the real deal. And so all that just gone. And now, I can focus on the stuff that really lights me up and that I really want. And it is so much better. And it's so much, like you said, it's so much more relaxing, right? Because because I think because you're more aligned with who you are, your core. And recognizing that and playing into that is far, far. Oh, sorry, I'm just having a realization here now. Playing into that, yes. And that's what you help people do, is in running and in coaching, right? Is helping people play into their strengths.
Yeah. Well, so
And
it's so funny, right? Go ahead.
And what strengthens them, right? You have a particular definition of that too. Right.
Yeah, it's so funny the things that like stick with you or the things that you recognize over time that you say over and over again, and you're like, oh, I guess that's my core message. Oh, I guess that's my unique perspective, right? That those things that like, as at least in a lot of the work that I do is helping people in their marketing, is like questions that you ask people and then you realize like, oh, there's my epiphany on that. But yes, I talk about strengths all the time, and I talk about them in athletics and about them in business. And the most important thing a couple things that I talk about. One is, in athletics, people always, and I think in business too, in the world, right? They say, work on your weaknesses, right? Try and turn your weaknesses into areas of strength. And in the entrepreneur world, we tend to say, don't bother. Work on your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. And in the context of a cross country and track team, like that's a really interesting perspective. I'll just take it in the context of a cross country team, right? Some kids are going to be stronger. They're going to have more fast twitch muscles. So they're going to be stronger with speed. Some kids are naturally going to be stronger in the hills. Some kids are naturally going to be endurance runners and strong in that we race 3 miles, strong in that 3rd mile, right? Everybody has different strengths. And the beauty of that when you're working as a team is knowing, right? Knowing and not judging, not wishing that you had different strengths, but knowing how your strengths play into what we are trying to accomplish as a team, right? So one of us may be really good at getting out in the beginning of the race. And so the rest of us say, okay, even though RoseAnn she's not the fastest one on the team, we're going to put her first on the starting line so that she can get out and clear a path for us, right? That's her strength. And then, Sally Sue, when RoseAnn gets tired, your strength is going to be that middle section of the race where you're going to take RoseAnn with you as long as RoseAnn can hang. And you're going to push that middle section of the race. And you're going to carry the load, right? You're going to do the energetic work for the rest of us in that middle part of the race. And then, you know, so-and-so who's so strong in the hills, you're going to take the lead in the hills, and you're going to pull us up the hills. And what I'm getting at is, I don't know if this makes sense at all, but, you know, when you're running as a pack, the person who's doing the work, who's in the front, the person who's in the front of the race is always doing the most amount of work, right? Everybody else is sort of just riding in their energy. And so if you've seen races on the track, right, you see like that race where it looks like it was stolen by someone, like someone is able to steal the race. One person did all the work out front, and then in the last 100 meters, somebody went blowing by them. But when you know your strengths as a team, and you can truly be selfless about using your strengths to help everyone accomplish their goal, it works out really beautifully, where you recognize, you know, Carrie wouldn't have been in a position to blow past everybody and win the race if RoseAnn and Sally Sue and, you know, whoever hadn't pulled her along the rest of the way. And Carrie, then, I'm using myself as an example, but that person's job anytime is to encourage everybody else, right? When you're in your moment of strength, when you're in your gifts, when you're in your genius, your job is to like spread that. So anyways, you were asking me for my unique perspective on strengths. The deal is, people think strengths are things that you're good at, and weaknesses are things that you're bad at. And while that's sometimes true, a better definition is that strengths are things that while you're doing them, they light you up. They make you feel fully alive, right? So in the athletic example, right, somebody's going to feel like jazzed and energized when they're running up the hill, and somebody else is going to feel jazzed and energized when they're running down the hill. And when you know that, when you're in that, in your aliveness, you can't help but spread that and bring people along with you. And a weakness is something that while you're doing it, you feel depleted. And that is where so many of us get stuck, is that we think we're supposed to work on our weaknesses, but then we're just constantly working in our areas of depletion. We're working on things that naturally suck the life out of us. And I mean, unfortunately, I think so many of us are living our lives, especially our professional lives, there, because we might be good at them, right? They might be areas of high competency. We might think that it's something that we need in order to succeed, right? That's what you and I were just talking about, those things in our businesses, right?
Yep.
And you know, I think whether it's athletically or, you know, professionally, it's recognizing I actually just need to get better and better and better at my areas of strength, and know when and how to use and apply them, and to spread them, right? When you're,
Oops.
oh, am I still here?
Okay. Okay. Start at when you're.
So when you're in what lights you up, you naturally light everybody else up, right? If you allow what lights you up to truly light you up, right, you bring other people with you. You are naturally attractive. And that's the beauty inside of a team situation, even inside of a mastermind situation, of understanding like, this is where RoseAnn shines. Let's let her shine. Let's let her spread her awesomeness so that we can bask in that and be lit up by it, and not have to feel deficient that we don't have the same strengths, but instead feel like, God, we complement each other. Yeah. We support each other. Yeah. And that's how teamwork works in my world.
I love it. I think all communities should be like that. Like, I want that in my business, right? I want that team in my business where everybody is strong. And yeah.
And that's a function of good leadership, right? Is recognizing, is being able to see what other people's strengths are. Because I think a lot of us aren't aware of our own strengths. I know I've spent a lot of years agreeing to things. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I got it. Yep, I'll figure it out. I can do that. Like, and knowing the instant I'm asked, no. I don't want to do it. Oh, that sounds hard. I don't want to figure that out. I have instant anxiety, right? Where other things, like, that's a no. That's, if it depletes you in being asked, don't say yes to it, right? So I think it's sort of our job as leaders of communities, as the bosses in our businesses, to notice that, to notice. And it can be hard because we have something that needs to get done and we want that other person to say yes to it because we want it off our plate and onto theirs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's good leadership, is wanting everyone on your team to be in their strengths, and asking, right? Saying, do you really want to do this? Or, hey, do you have a solution that I'm not thinking of? Or is there anybody else you think would really love this? Like, all of those things are okay to ask. It sometimes can make job descriptions a little fluid, a little tricky at first, but that's how my communities thrive. That's how my teams have succeeded, is really understanding each other, knowing what you can count on each other for, and being okay to say, you cannot count on me for this. And then when there's something that everybody says, I don't want to do, right? When everybody in the community is going, nope, don't pick me for that. Mm-hmm. Then it's okay, well, this has to get done. How can we, as a team, as a corporate culture, as a whatever we are, how can we find a solution here? And I think that's good leadership, is not like top down, not just deciding, not just assigning it to someone, but okay, if this doesn't work for any of us, how do we get it to work for all of us?
Okay, I'm stunned. Those are so good. It's like every question I have, you've answered.
Well,
but,
awesome.
But it's brilliant. I mean, really and when you exercise that sort of leadership as being a good leader, getting the group to be leaders also, and then you're getting them to recognize other people's strengths as well as their own, and how to move out of being so egocentric into and like you listed them: self, team, and I missed one, and then whole self, the greater self. And that's evolution, right? That's our process of evolution. And you're getting people, like when you're coaching high school kids, right? You're getting them at that age where, boom, you can vault them through the whole process. Like, that's amazing.
Okay, so I want to talk about that for just a second, because my husband and I are both high school coaches. We coach together and we work well together because we have complementary strengths, right? So part of understanding your strengths is recognizing like what lights you up, right? And one of the things that lights me up is running with someone and talking about stuff that matters. And that took me a long time to recognize that's a strength. That seemed like two separate things. That seemed like, why on earth would that matter to anyone? Right? Like, that's where I was coming from. Like, can I really claim this as a strength? That's a weird one, right? Going on a run and talking about deep stuff. Like, that's bizarre. But it is a strength. And it is when I feel most fully alive. And it's actually where I do some of my best coaching. And you called me a business life coach. And I know, as a cross country and track coach, I have been really successful and I've created successful teams. And I don't think it has much to do with the running, right? The running's just what we do while we stretch ourselves, while we become who we want to become, while we decide if we're going to be great, while we take scary risks, while we choose to believe in ourselves and in our teammates. And it's like really just this massive metaphor for who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in the world. And a physical challenge is just a way to do that. And in the context of a high school team with a goal of reaching the state meet or whatever, it just gives context for us to talk about our values and to live our priorities and to decide who we want to be. And that's how I coach, right? My husband, he's all about the science and what's happening physiologically and why this workout is great. And they need to know that too. And I need to know that, like we all need to know it. So it's totally complementary, but it's just the two of us living in our strengths and being an example and totally acknowledging and supporting each other's strengths, right? Recognizing, I think that's what's missing in a lot of leadership, right? Is we happen to be married to each other, but even if we weren't, right? This complementary thing going on where there's not one person who's like the head honcho and saying, this is the only way, right? We recognize, and we have other people on staff who are great with other things, and we acknowledge them too, right? We give every person. And when an idea comes from someone who's 14 years old, which we've had some amazing ideas from people who are 14 years old. We are continually impressed by people who are 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, right? All we do is provide the space for them to come up with a good idea, right? But yeah, I don't know what question I was answering, but I think that's
be heard too.
Yeah.
Not ignored.
Yeah. Yeah. And because so the way that I always, right, I think it's a leader's job to create the safe space. I think it's a leader's job to create some structures, right? And sometimes in the way that I talk about things, I tend to talk very like, the 10,000 foot view. And my husband tends to talk about like the 6-inch view, like what's right in front of you. And so sometimes it's hard for me to articulate all of the structures that are in place, right? That create the safe space. Mm-hmm. But that's what we started with when you said, what does it take, right? It just takes showing up and plugging in. It's the leader's job to show up as well and to give everybody something to plug into, right? So inside of a coaching program, what does that look like, right? For each of us, it might be different, a number of calls or, an online platform or whatever structures you've got going on in your business. For our athletic coaching, it's going to practice, knowing what to expect each day, knowing how a practice is going to run. What do we do the first 15 minutes, right? There's structure involved. It's not just like, hey, everyone, this is a safe space. Be free, live in your strengths, right? There's structure. Problems. But sometimes I forget to talk about the structures, right? Because they happen sort of intuitively for me, and they're not something that I like think about. Where other people, it's their strength to be very deliberate about creating those structures.
I can see so many parallels into things in my life too, like in the art world, it's the same thing, like you need a structure to get your brain out of the way. Like your brain will occupy itself with all that detail and structure and the how-tos so that you can show up as a fullness being to accomplish that. And it takes both parts. You can't do one without the other, at least not in this world. And yeah, so more of us need to I think put that into our business, because it's really, as an entrepreneur, I know it's really easy to get lost in the detail and the structure and not see the big picture, or to put the big picture, I'll get to that as soon as I can, but I have to get all this other stuff done. But you don't. You need community.
Well, you do need community, but don't you think that's where faith comes in and belief comes in? So, because sometimes the structures, okay, how do I explain this? Sometimes the structures just have to change, right? Like you and I both just talked about how we had this idea of how our businesses were going to go, and then we totally reevaluated and shifted, right? So but the ultimate goal hasn't changed. So where I, at one time, thought my business was going to look one way, the ultimate goal was actually to create the feeling that I have now, right? The feeling of being safe, the feeling of living in my strengths, the feeling of having freedom around my schedule, and just feeling free inside what I'm doing with my life. Like, that's what I really wanted. I said I wanted a 7-figure business. I thought I wanted, this coaching empire. And I don't know that that's never going to happen, but I definitely don't want to be building that the way that it's supposed to be built right now, right? Like, I definitely don't want to be doing that right now. I want to be doing what I'm doing, which is showing up in the way that I love. And for me, that came from knowing that if I want it, I can have it. And I don't have to force it into existence. And so the same is true right now. What I've got going on with this team of high school girls that I'm coaching is the coronavirus really threw us for a loop. So we were really excited and we set a big goal, and based on who we thought was going to be on the team this year. And based on who we thought was going to be on the team this year, it was a big goal and it was realistic. And then a couple families moved out of state. Right, coronavirus hit and people made big life changes. A couple families moved out of state. One family decided to send their daughter to a private school. Like 3 families moved out of state, actually. Like, cross country scored the top 5 athletes score. And maybe 4 of our top 5, definitely 5 of our top 7 disappeared. Right? And yet we already had the goal, right? We already had the goal. And so I sat down with the kids who were left and said, I don't think we're going to adjust that goal, right? Like, we want it. We can do it. We don't know what's going to happen. But we know we can show up every day and we can take responsibility for what we do. And I don't know, I sort of, I'm not sure I'm doing a good job of drawing the parallels, but it feels like the same thing. It feels like, yeah, things never look like what we think they're going to look like, right? We have way less control than we think we have. But I have faith that this group of kids, not the group of kids I thought I was going to be looking at, but this group of kids can do great things. And so I'm excited to see what happens, to see how they do it, to see who steps up and what miraculous things happen. I'm not choosing to be disappointed before things start. I'm just like, all right, see how this plays out. But I don't know if that's unique to me, but I just know, doesn't matter who shows up.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've hit on a really deep thing there in that, and you've actually mentioned this all through the talk, is that getting to that core, that core of you, your values, what you want, what you really want, not the surface crap that you think you want. With that, that's your goal, right? And the structure comes and goes. It might be a business structure, it might be a team structure, it might be a home life structure at one point, it might be, but the goal is always the same. And I think that's yes, we all need to realize that, right? And play into that bigness of ours, right? That core of ours. And that because that's our true strength, right?
And always when you look at external goals, I think they're great to have, right? Like the state meet, or $1 million in my business, or, pay off my mortgage or whatever. There's nothing wrong with having external goals, but always that goal is just a signifier, right? It's just something to look at, to remind you of the feeling.
Yeah.
So one of the teams that I coached years and years ago, their whole goal for the year was to get to the national meet. And they wound up falling short of that. But on the way to falling short of their goal, accomplished that feeling that they wanted, right? Of like, we did it. They had all these things in mind that they wanted to do. They recognized we did what we set out to do. We did all we could for what we wanted. We had a small team gap. Each one of us ran our absolute best. So-and-so stepped up when, like, all of the things they wanted to accomplish. And of course, they had disappointment of not achieving their external goal. But the main thing, realizing that we can do great things, that we can achieve something together that none of us could have achieved alone, that we could do what was seemingly impossible, right? At 20 weeks prior.
Mm-hmm.
That is what you take, right? And that is so much bigger. And I think we do that a lot in our businesses, and we forget to look at it. We forget to look at it because we're too busy looking at that $1 million mark, or
and
that
judging ourselves harshly for it.
Yeah, instead of, oh, I'm doing this instead. Does it feel like what I thought $1 million would feel like? Like, I know that is where I am in my life right now. Is I recognized I wanted to build my business to a certain point so that I could do the things that I'm doing right now in my life. I didn't recognize that I could do all the things that I'm doing, that I could run with my friends in the morning, that I could be here for my kids pick them up from school, although right now they're still at home, but that I could be there for them, that I could have plenty of money to buy groceries and still volunteer, like that I could do all the things that I wanted to do without having, and there's nothing wrong with having a big $1 million business. That I work inside a company where it's like, oh, this is her mission. This is what she's meant to do. She's living that, and good on her. And I have the life that I thought $1 million business would bring me. And I didn't have to build $1 million business.
Isn't that an insight in itself? It's like, oh, just wait a minute. I am living what I wanted.
Yeah. And now we get to ask ourselves, what do I want now?
Yeah.
Right. Instead of looking at like I didn't get that. Like, yeah.
As you're talking, I kept thinking, like, man, I wish this would scale up to the government. But I mean, it does, right? It scales from individual coaching, it scales to team, and it crosses genres. So why not? Mm-hmm. We'll put this out for.
Right. I know. I think about that in terms of the slow change that happens in institutions.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. I think it's okay that there's slow change in institutions, as long as there's people inside of those institutions speaking truth.
Yeah.
Right. Reminding each other what's really important. Mm-hmm. I know I'm in the United States. That's missing a little bit right now.
Well, it kind of is all over the world. Yeah, it's slow in coming. Okay, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I've been meaning to tell you this whole conversation. I love your necklaces.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, we'll just end there. And thank you so much. I'm so excited for our next conversation because we are going to continue this.
Awesome. Thanks so much, RoseAnn.
Okay.